What is going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Dead Jester Cinema. Now, if you clicked on the link, you already know what you're here to see, so I can't really intro this video much better than that. I think I'm kind of running the gamut here with ranking videos when it comes to these three franchises like Freddy, Jason, and Michael. And this one just popped in my head along with doing the Freddy death, so I figured I did Freddy, might as well do Jason next. So anyway, sit back, relax, and let me take you on this magical mystery tour as we rank the Jason deaths. Coming in dead last at number 11 is Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. This movie is actually one of my favorites in the whole series. In fact, I think it's top 3, but even I can't deny that the way Jason goes out in this movie is really fucking weak.
Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit smoking.
After all the shit he was put through by Tina, I mean getting electrocuted, falling through stairs, getting a porch dropped on him, getting set on fire and then blown up. After all of that, the big ending to finally kill off Jason is Tina's dead dad being resurrected and dragging him into the lake? What a bunch of horse cock.
That is one big pile of shit.
It's the biggest blemish on this movie for me. I get the original idea was to have the dad look more decayed and zombified since he's been at the bottom of the lake, which, by the way, great search and rescue work there, Crystal Lake PD. I mean, you can't find a dead body in a currentless lake, but even if that look had panned out and it was supposed to be the way they wanted it to look, I still think it would have been lame. There could have been a cooler death with like maybe Tina using her psychic ability to maybe have the forest come alive and like rip Jason apart limb from limb, you know, Evil Dead style. But, you know, I guess that would have been too expensive of a feat to kind of pull off, you know, effects-wise and everything. And besides, this series gets stupid with Evil Dead a few films later, so moving on. Coming in at number 10 is Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. I mean, what else is there to say? Just like Part 7, this film's ending is the drizzling shits.
Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit drinking.
Had he just been melted by the toxic waste into a blob of Crystal Lake goo, then that would have been good enough. But they had to go a step too far. I mean, kind of like going a step too far by tying him in with Rennie's past. And also going a step too far by having him audibly speak. Sort of. And then it's 3 steps too far by having him inexplicably turn into a child. And by doing that, this whole ending just walked off of a cliff into the deep end of the suck pool. Had they rationalized this ending by saying, you know, it was Rennie that was seeing Jason as a child, like in her mind, but his real life rotting adult body was being washed away, I could buy that. But no, we are made to believe that Jason actually turned back into a little boy and is now laying dead in a New York sewer. For fuck's sake. Coming in at number 9 is Jason X. For fuck's sake, going through these kills is really starting to take a toll on me.
Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit amphetamines.
I mean, by this point in the film, they already pissed in his mouth once by having the nippless robot blast him apart like a fucking piñata. Then, after he gets rebuilt into the indestructible T1 turd, I guess the only way they could kill him off was to punt him out into space and then burn him in Earth 2's atmosphere, with Sergeant Bronsky mounting his ass from behind, which looks a little sus, but you know what? Why not at this point? Because that's how I feel watching this movie as a fan, taking it up the ass. But let's be real, it's not just Jason's death here at the end that's stupid. I mean, the whole movie is just loud and obnoxious and stupid. And if you're into that sort of thing, great, more power to you. I'm glad you enjoy it. I don't, and I never have, probably never will, and I didn't enjoy it even when I first saw it in the theater, all the way back in 2002 or 2003, and 20 years later, I still think it is the cherry on top of a shit sundae. Holy fuck, it's been 20 years? Coming in at number 8 is Jason Goes to Hell. What else would you expect from a batshit crazy and preposterous film than a batshit crazy and preposterous ending?
Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
First of all, there is this forced connection between this and Evil Dead by not only having the Necronomicon, but also the Kandarian dagger, which I guess only appears through the blood connection to a Voorhees, which wasn't the case in Evil Dead 2, obviously, but whatever. So not only is all this being shoehorned into a Jason movie completely preposterous, but the kill itself looks goofy as fuck, as it looks like Jason is being dragged to hell by gigantic Muppet hands. Look, I get that Adam Marcus has a hard-on for Evil Dead. I mean, who doesn't? But it doesn't belong in Friday the 13th. Like, look, I got a hard-on for James Bond, but I wouldn't drop him in the middle of Crystal Lake to kill off Jason. But beyond all that, I actually think Jason getting dragged to hell is a pretty cool ending. I mean, it's in the title of the movie. He's literally going to hell. So we are getting what we paid for. I just wish it looked a little bit more badass than looking like Jason being dragged down to Sesame Street. Although, you know, I guess the one silver lining is that he doesn't turn back into a little boy or get dragged to hell by Daddy Cardigan. Plus, you know, it did give us this ending, which made all of us shit our pants back in 1993, so, you know, I guess it is what it is. Coming in at number 7 is Friday the 13th, Part 2. The kill itself here is fine. Now cut it slack for being, you know, the second official kill in the franchise. And with the franchise not yet reaching that point of absurdity where each kill had to be bigger than the previous one, simply getting a machete to the shoulder like cutting into a loaf of bread, you know, it can seem very pedestrian. But you know, I give it points here for the setup with the trickery that Ginny pulls on Jason by pretending to be his mother and lulling him into a false sense of security, which all ties back into the conversation she had with Paul at the bar. But since Jason isn't really dead here, does it necessarily count as a kill? Speaking of which, coming in at number 6 is Friday the 13th, Part 3D. Kind of like Part 2, Jason isn't really dead here, it's kind of more like a defeat of sorts thanks to Part 4, but, you know, whatever, I'm counting it as a kill anyway. After going extra hard on Ali by giving him the Skywalker treatment and then just chopping his ass up like he insulted his dead mother, Chris decides now is the perfect time to deposit an axe right into his f***ing head. And down goes Voorhees. Similarly to Part 2, there isn't anything really fancy about the kill here, except it does up the ante obviously from a machete to the shoulder to an axe to the head. Plus it does give Jason's hockey mask that distinguishable axe damage that would stick with the look of the mask through every film from there on. Even when he's gotten brand new masks, the mark is still there, so points for consistency. Coming in at number 5 is the 2009 Friday the 13th remake. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the remake overall. I mean, it does have its moments, and one of those moments that I will give it credit for is the kill at the end of Jason, because I think it's pretty good. A lot like Ginny from Part 2, Whitney uses the old "I'm your mother" dodge to lull Jason into a confused stupor, before chaining his ass to the business end of a wood chipper and letting that f***er rip. And then while he's ensnared, she takes Jason's own machete and stabs him square in the chest with it. I mean, it's not a crazy kill by any stretch, or even a great one for that matter. It's okay. It sits a little higher than Parts 2 and 3 simply because I feel it's a little bit more creative than just simply a machete to the shoulder or an axe to the head, even if it does feel a little bit like a redux version of Part 2's kill with the whole trickery nonsense. However, I probably would have placed this a little higher had the wood chipper actually shredded apart part of his dome piece. But I get why they didn't. I mean, you gotta have the sequels and shit. And it's still a sequel we are waiting on 13 years later, and one we'll most likely never get, as a franchise will probably be rebooted yet again. Oh yeah, and I probably could have done without the little cheesy one-liner that Whitney throws out there.
Jason! Say hi to Mommy! In hell!
Coming in at number 4 is the original Friday the 13th. The kill itself is simple. He drowns. So if it's that simple, why is it here at number 4 on this ranking? Let me explain. Because without his death here, there is no franchise. There is no crazy Mrs. Voorhees killing counselors. There is no angry Jason avenging his mother's beheading. There's nothing. So while it's a death that is as basic can be, plus we never actually see it happen, it's a death whose impact reverberates through not only this film, but is the catalyst for one of the most iconic franchises and iconic killers moving forward. And you know, speaking of Mrs. Voorhees, I'll even throw in her death here as a bonus, because much like Jason's drowning, without her death, Jason doesn't come back for the sequel. Their deaths are forever intertwined into the fate of the franchise itself, and you couldn't have one without the other. Coming in at number 3 is Freddy vs. Jason. Much like Freddy's death in the ranking I just did from the same movie, Jason's death here is a bloody, glorious one. My personal feelings of Jason aside, this battle at the end was the main event showdown we had all been waiting a decade for. And they beat the bloody shit out of each other, with each getting their turns to lay it in thick. And even though Jason may get the upper hand at the end, no pun intended, Freddy does f him up something raw. I mean, like a Ginsu knife slicing through butter. This was the big time pay-per-view fight that we fans had been waiting a decade for. And you know, most of the times in that scenario, what is eventually released cannot live up to the hype or expectations. But this battle at the end was the exception to that rule. It delivered in almost every aspect and left us leaving the theater pumped. And you know, I don't care what any of you Freddy fans say, Jason won that fight. Coming in at number 2 is Friday the 13th Part 4, The Final Chapter. It was so hard to choose between the Jason deaths between what was my number 1 and this kill from Part 4 because I think they are both iconic and I love both films. I mean, it is really hard to outdo the horror maestro Tom Savini, which, yes, I know, putting this one at number 2 means technically one kill did top this one, but whatever, it's my ranking. The effects work here is just awesome. And not only is it bad enough that Jason's eye socket deep throats that machete, but as it appears that Jason is about to come back for a round 2, Tommy Jarvis is like, miss me with that shit, Jason, and goes absolutely ham on his back like he owed him money. And other than him drowning as a boy, it marks the first official time that Jason was actually killed on camera in the franchise. And I mean for good, quote unquote, as he didn't appear in the following film except in flashback ghost form, which I really don't count. So for all intents and purposes, he was dead. Until, of course, Part 6 came around, which means, coming in at number 1 is Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. Jason's death here in Part 6 just barely edges out his death from Part 4, just because I feel like it is an epic finale to what is my personal favorite Friday the 13th movie. And I can assure you that there is absolutely no bias when it came to making that decision to put Part 6 here at 1. Well, maybe a little bit. But I love the showdown with Tommy, and back where it all began for Jason, in Crystal Lake. The ring of fire surrounding the boat is an exceptionally nice touch, as is anchoring Jason's ass to the bottom of the lake with a gigantic rock. And then to add insult to injury, he gets the side of his face ripped apart with a boat propeller. And just that final shot of Jason dead but not dead at the bottom of the lake is something that I feel has become synonymous with Jason himself. Like when people think of Jason dead at the bottom of Crystal Lake, it's this moment that they typically think of, not little boy Jason. It's him chained to the rock and the hockey mask and as an adult. But anyway, it's my favorite Jason kill of the franchise, which is why it is number 1 on my ranking. Well everyone, that was it for this ranking video of the Jason deaths from the Friday the 13th franchise in a whole. How would you rank the Jason deaths? What are your favorites? Did you agree with my list? Did you think I was crazy for putting some where I did? Leave your comments below, and as always, like, comment, and subscribe. Adios. Now, GTFO!